Okay, ready to go.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. So nice for you all to join us, and we're happy to have you. My name is Joanne Whitty, and I am here to introduce Candice Brunlinger, who is a clinical herbalist. She's our speaker tonight, and she is an intuitive healer and a health educator, and she offers classes and workshops as well and coaches others about using plants for healing and exploring spiritual emotional health. And if you look back behind her, you can see her incredible apothecary. She inspires people in the kitchen with healthy meals and to prioritize their self-care while juggling the demands of a busy family. And a fun fact, I always like to find out something about somebody that most people don't know, and I did not know this, is that she is a fire dancer, which is so wild. I've seen people fire dancing, which is very cool. And so with that, I would like to welcome Candice, and I'm so honored and excited to hear your talk tonight. So thank you for joining us and sharing your knowledge.
Thank you, Joanne, and thank you everyone for coming and joining us this evening. So my name is Candice, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my story. So I grew up not knowing anything about health or what it meant to be healthy. Grew up eating very unhealthy foods, which set me up for a lot of autoimmune conditions and poor health in my late childhood into my early adulthood. So as I went to college, I started exploring what it meant to be healthy, what it meant to change the food that I ate, and what it meant to put nutrition in my body. And, you know, that was a very long journey. I became an herbalist. I just learned all these different ways to be healthy. And so now, 15 years later, I'm as healthy as I've ever been in my life. And I now support others on their journey of health and wellness. And, but what I have discovered over the years of going to college, being, working many jobs, becoming a mom and supporting a family is that, you know, we are never really perfect with our diets. And as healthy, as much as we want to try to be healthy, a lot of times there are things that get in the way. And a lot of it is time. So what I have found over the years is the importance of meal planning. You know, meal planning really helps to support my healthy choices and being healthier in the kitchen and preparing healthier meals for my family. So I'm really excited that I'm going to be presenting this topic to you guys today, because I think this is a missing link in the American standard diet, how we are raised to look at food and how to prepare food. And so this is just, I think, an important topic. And now that we're dealing with shelter orders and a pandemic, we're going to the store less frequently. So I think this is another element of why meal planning is so important, that if we are stretching our trips to the grocery stores, we need to be implementing more meal planning to help support our healthy meals throughout the week. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen. I specifically like to work with families because I'm a busy mom and I have a family. And so I recognize what families have to juggle and what moms have to juggle. So I personally really like to involve the family in meal planning and food prep. So I'm going to talk to you guys today about how I do that. Here is my son and I. He's 7 years old. He just turned 7 last month, and we enjoy a complete shake together every morning. And I'll talk more about why I believe the complete shake is an important element, at least to my food planning and my meal planning. It has become an important element that has really made things a lot easier for me. So I'll talk more about that in a minute, but I just wanted to share this picture of us because this is our morning routine. Every morning, instead of me being in the kitchen trying to cook food for everybody, we rely on working with a complete shake. So then instead of cooking, I'm actually sitting down with my son and we are enjoying bonding time for a good half an hour every morning together. And this was a very important element for me that I really appreciate in my meal planning. Because the idea is we do want to spend more time with our families. So one thing about meal planning is plan it into your schedule. And I think this is the hardest step, but it's really the first step to take in order for it to become a routine. So that means we sometimes have to kind of shift and create time to be able to do this. So set time out each week where you plan out some of your meals. And make sure that whatever you're trying to plan is attainable and realistic for you in that moment. So don't expect to be meal planning every single week, and don't expect to meal plan every single meal within that week, because that's not really realistic. So if you're new to meal planning, you may just start with meal planning for 3 days at a time. You may only meal plan your dinners, or maybe just your lunches. Make it something that's easy for you and take baby steps. And then after a few weeks of trying one thing, integrate another layer into that. So maybe after a month, now you take it to 4 days, or after a month, maybe you're meal planning both your lunches and your dinners. So do what works best for you. But allow it to become a routine, and I like to correspond it with my shopping trips. So before I go to the grocery store, I'm taking the time to just spend about 20 minutes meal planning, and I like to involve the family. My son is responsible for choosing one meal out of the week, and that's kind of his reward. He gets to pick whatever it is, but he also has to help prepare and plan the meal and make the meal too. So that's part of the incentive that we have for him. Write it out, whether it's on a piece of paper, hang up a dry erase board in your dining room or on your fridge, or use a visual meal planning chart. And just find this very easily off of Pinterest or Google. If you go into Google and you just search weekly meal planner, you will see tons of them come up, all kinds of different formats. So choose one that works for you. I personally like a very simplistic format where I have my breakfast, lunch, dinners, snacks, and then have a little grocery list. So after I go through and plan out, I can go through and create my grocery list after that, selecting the items that I don't have already. And then of course, adapt and allow flexibility. We may meal plan and something may happen and we don't have to commit to it, right? So make sure you're allowing that flexibility and that you're not getting down on yourself if you don't commit to your meal planning. We don't want stress in the kitchen. I have this rule in my kitchen, stress-free kitchen. The kitchen needs to be fun and stress-free. So if meal planning is starting to create stress for you, take a breath, take a pause, come at it from a different viewpoint or just in a way that helps you not to feel overwhelmed by the process. But I think a big part of just accepting and allowing flexibility to really help with easing that. So for some tips, I like to make sure I hit all my food groups within a week, and I really emphasize whole foods, fruits, and vegetables. I like to browse through a cookbook or, explore Pinterest and get a weekly inspiration. So my rule of thumb is to try one new recipe a week. Doesn't always happen. Sometimes it only happens twice a month, but my goal is to try one new thing a week. I always go through my fridge and pantry first. I think this is really important because you want to make use of what you have. And I think it's important to try to save food and prevent food from spoiling. So if you take that time to just kind of scan through your fridge and your pantry, kind of work with what you have, especially things that are close to expiring, and then build your meal planning from there. A big thing that helps me with my meal planning over the week is to reuse leftovers. So I'm kind of, as I meal plan, I'm planning ahead. I'm making a little extra of one meal that I can utilize the next day to make things easy for myself. I always kind of schedule in. So when I'm looking at my meal planning, I'm thinking ahead. If I'm making beans the next day, I want to make sure I'm soaking my beans the night before. It's ideal to soak your grains, beans, nuts, and seeds ahead of time before you use them. But in the moments when we want to grab them, sometimes we're like, oh, I didn't plan ahead, I didn't soak them. And so that's where meal planning can really help us, is if we know we're going to be eating beans in the week, or if we know we're going to be eating some nuts, that we are planning ahead and we're soaking them ahead of time so they're ready and they're most easily digestible for us when we start to use them. And then of course, streamline your work by preparing some of your fruits and vegetables to be ready to use. So this is the food prep part of the meal planning, which I'll get to next. And then of course, try to have healthy backup foods in the pantry or freezer that are ready to use to help you maintain healthy choices for these times when you're not able to meal plan. And then of course, I love the complete shake from Juice Plus. This gives me reassurance. And if I have a shake every morning as my breakfast, that allows me to free up one meal a day that I'm not cooking. And then that allows me to free up my morning to plan ahead of time for my dinners as well. So if I need to soak some things, or I want to throw some things in the crock pot or Instapot, I have the time to now do that because I'm not overthinking about what I'm even going to be making for breakfast. It's as easy as shaking a bottle. Now, why do we want to food prep? Why is food prep such an important part of meal planning? It streamlines our time because preparing veggies, the dishes, the cleanup, all this is extra work, right? So what I've noticed in the kitchen, I spend way more time preparing food and cleaning up than I actually do cooking the food and eating it. So if we can streamline this process, it can really free up a lot of time over the course of the week. And we are more likely to eat more fruits and vegetables if they are convenient and ready to use the moment we need them. And I think this is so important. And I noticed this in myself. I was raised on convenient foods. My body is programmed to make my meal planning as convenient as I possibly can. And when I come home after a long day and I'm tired and now I have to make dinner, the last thing I want to do is pull out all these whole vegetables, start chopping, spend a half an hour preparing them to be able to even toss them in that pan or that pot to start cooking. It's exhausting sometimes at the end of the day to even think about doing that. And so what do we end up doing? We end up grabbing a quick TV dinner or a box of something processed, because in the moment we're exhausted and we feel like that's easier. But what I have discovered is that's a total myth. Because if I take that time to prepare my veggies, like here I came home, chopped up that broccoli, I chopped up that asparagus, I cleaned up that bok choy, and it's all sitting in a container ready to go. When I come home after a long days of work, I pull that container out, all this is ready to go to be thrown into that stir fry. And so what I discovered is I eat about 5 times more fruits and veggies throughout the course of the week if I prepare them and have them ready to go. And I think this is so important for us who are busy working parents who feel exhausted at the end of the day. The other cool plus that I found is storage space, because oh my gosh, I would get so overwhelmed coming home from farmer's market or getting my CSA, and I'd have this huge box of all this beautiful fruit and vegetables. Or now when I go to the grocery store only once a week instead of like 3 or 4 times a week like I used to, I'm bringing home more fresh foods, and I'm like, how am I going to fit this into my fridge? So what I found is when I do my food prep, when I come home from the grocery store, things fit in the fridge more easily, because you're removing a lot of the bulky parts of the vegetables that take up a lot of space. So keep in mind, food prep will definitely look different because depending on the size of your family. If you have a large family with lots of kids, your food prep is going to look very different than what mine does with a family of 3 with 1 child. So I'm going to kind of highlight differences, but I want you guys to just recognize that if you have a larger family, you may not, it's, you know, prepping all your vegetables for the course of the week may not be realistic for you. You may only be able to prep enough vegetables to feed a large family for 2 or 3 days at a time. So you might be doing your food prep every 3 or 4 days instead of once a week. So that's something to think about. I always time my food prep out when I come home from my largest trip of the week. So when I go to the grocery store, when I go to farmer's market, I'm prepping my food when I come home. I plan it into my schedule. It helps so much to have a clean kitchen that's ready to go with clean countertops. You know, we're all family, so we all know how the kitchen can look at times. Let's not pretend that we're all perfect here with the spotless kitchen. There have been times that I came home from a grocery store and I have dishes on the counter and things left over from the meal before. And I'm like, I don't even have a place to put all this, let alone to wash my dishes and dry them. And so what ends up happening in that case, I just throw it all in the fridge, right? Because now I have to clean my kitchen before I can do anything. So I learned real quick to make sure my kitchen was clean before I even go to the grocery store. I even lay out my towels on my counters. So by the time I come home, I can just throw everything into a basin. I can start rinsing everything, and then I lay them out on the towels to get everything dried. Having that clean kitchen really helps streamline everything. And then after your vegetables have dried, well, usually while everything's drying, I process my fruit first. So you can see here, I've cut up my pineapple, I've cut up a mango. I have these in containers ready to go. Fruits, berries. Berries I don't bother with because they're usually in their own containers. They're kind of mostly ready to go. I may rinse off some harder berries, denser berries like blueberries and things like that, but your soft berries like raspberries and blackberries, you don't want to rinse them until right before you use them. Otherwise, you're going to increase the chances of them molding. But tropical fruits in particular, you can start to prep them. So I prep them ahead of time. And what I do is as I'm prepping them, I'm also making a smoothie. So I'm kind of banging out two things with one stone. So I have my blender out now. I'm prepping my fruits. I'm throwing them in the blender. I'm tossing in a little bit of frozen fruits or maybe a handful of microgreens. I make a smoothie. Now I have a smoothie to sip on and feed my family while I'm dealing with food prep, right? Because we also have to make sure the kids are fed while we're prepping food, right? So the smoothie makes it easy. So I prep my fruit, get a smoothie going, hand that out to the kids. And they're now good for an hour or two while I finish working on some more food prep. Then after fruits, I move on to veggies and I start chopping, dicing, cutting vegetables and storing them into containers. And as I'm doing this, I'm also thinking about what parts of these can I be using for my dinner. So as I'm prepping them, I'm also prepping dinner, which is once again, streamlining. I encourage you investing in some nice stackable containers. I actually, since this picture, I actually invested in some really cool new stackable containers that are really amazing. They have racks in them. These have vents in them. So these really cool full food storage containers that you can get that make it really nice for stacking inside your fridge for saving space. And then I love cloth storage bags. These are really good for storing roots. You know, when we bring everything home from the grocery store, it's all in plastic, but plastic often isn't the best thing to store our fruits and veggies in. So I have cloth bags that I transfer all my roots into, my onions and garlic and things like that into, and then I use these containers for anything that I'm chopping and prepping. You want to prepare your healthy foods that your family eats frequently. So look at your staples. What are the things that you are eating every single week, you know, and making sure that you're prepping these foods so they're ready to go. And then there's other things that I think about on that. You know, I do my food prep on Sunday. So as I'm doing this, I'm also thinking about, okay, so if I might make 3 more smoothies over the course of the week. So I might put together a couple little Ziploc bags or little containers. I'm throwing together some fruits. These are now going into the freezer. So basically when I need to make a smoothie, I just pull out that container or bag, everything is in it, ta-da, I toss it into the blender, I add my liquid, and I have a smoothie ready to go without having to pull out all these bags and all these containers of different individual fruits. Salad in a jar. If you haven't done salads in a jar yet, I highly recommend it. Super fun. But the other thing I like to do is, because now that I'm not traveling as much and on the go, I don't do salads in a jar so much anymore. I just take a nice big bowl like you see here. I make enough salad to last us for quite a few days. I bust out a salad dressing. And in this bowl, I just put a cloth towel over it and it sits on the shelf in the fridge. It does take up more space than a salad in a jar, so keep that in mind. But that salad bowl I can pull out, and then my family and I can just serve salads as needed, and it's ready to go. I love this idea of making homemade frozen entree dinners using leftovers. So whenever I'm making a large meal, I always make a little extra, and then I'll put that into a Pyrex container with a lid on it, and that goes in the freezer, and you can pull that out and basically treat it like a TV dinner, but it's healthy, right? So it's an entree dinner made of your own foods. And then, of course, one thing that's going to save you a lot of time and space in your fridge is if you practice farm to table or tower to table by growing your own food and harvesting it as needed. Something that's going to really kind of help you is making sure you have the appliances that streamline. I love my crock pot. I have an Instapot, and I have large stock pots too, all for making soups and broths and things like that. You don't have to have them all, but you should have at least one. Whatever one's going to work best for you. If you have, especially if you have a large family and you're processing a lot of vegetables, I highly recommend a food processor. It will totally make everything faster for you. I use my food processor to help me dice, grate, and slice everything on Sunday. And I just wipe out the container between each veggie, and then it's all done. It's so easy, and I'm not having to sit there and dice and grate and slice every individual item. I love my Vitamix. I make nut milks. You can make nut butters. You make your smoothies, your juices, your salad dressings, everything you can almost think of. I even now make cat food. I now make cat food out of my Vitamix. So, and I got it originally to make my own baby food. So the Vitamix, I think, is a great tool to have, or any high-powered blender. I love my KitchenAid mixer. I'm a baker. I make bread and from scratch. I make my own sourdough bread. And so having a KitchenAid mixer just really helps streamline a lot of baking for me in the kitchen. The grater and mandolin, you know, basic grater, most people have these, but a mandolin is so awesome. If you can get a mandolin in your kitchen, I'm sure you will love it. It's changed my life. You can also get these cool little spiraler things for making your own vegetable noodles too, which are really cool. Sharp knives, this will save you. Sharp knives are really key. And this is actually something that's really recommended when you start having kids helping you in the kitchen. As your kids get older, it's kind of this counterintuitive because you might think, well, if it's a sharp knife, my kid might be more likely to hurt themselves. But in reality, when we have dull knives and we're chopping with dull knives, or we have kids helping us in the kitchen and we're using dull knives, it increases the risk of injury. And then of course, having an emulsifying blender or a handheld mixer can help too, but these are pretty optional. I don't use these as much as I use everything else. So let's look at what this meal planning and food prep looks like, at least in my household, to kind of give you some ideas on what you could be doing as well. So on my Sunday food prep, you know, I'm thinking ahead, so I might do my meal planning. And so this is kind of a meal plan where I'm working with, you know, preparing some lentils and rice that day before, so that a way I can make a lentil loaf for Monday. And so that lentil loaf I might be making with some vegetables. And then the next day for lunch, I'm taking the leftover loaf and I'm now making either a lentil burger or wraps using the leftovers. So right there, I just streamlined something. And then for that dinner, I'm making, you know, like maybe a chicken dinner with some veggies and sides. And then I'm making an extra, maybe a couple extra pieces of chicken, so that we can shred that and use that in a salad for myself and the kids, maybe a chicken quesadilla. You know, and then, you know, I might be doing some beans and veggies for dinner that night, and taking leftovers and working at it with another meal the next day. So as you can see, I'm kind of piggybacking. You know, I'm taking one meal, I'm cooking a little extra, and I'm trying to take the leftovers and utilize it again. As far as snacks go, I basically always have vegetables with some kind of dip, and I'm rotating around the dips. I always have fruits. I often will have a baked good, and then the complete bar I think is a great idea to just have on hand for snacks, especially for yourself or your children. Breakfast, like I talked about before, I always started off with a complete shake, and then I have something easy as a secondary breakfast for my son. He's a growing boy, so I want him eating, you know, good breakfast. It's important to start our children off on very healthy breakfast. So the complete shake complements whatever else he's having for breakfast, whether it's yogurt and granola or a batch of, you know, steel cut oats. When I make steel cut oats, I'm making enough for at least 3 days, and I'm freezing extras to have in emergencies. So let's get back to a little bit more of the food prep. So now that I've kind of gone through and I've thought about, is that, you know, kind of what I want, I'm going to, that Sunday, make sure I'm having all these foods from the grocery store. I'm coming home and now I'm doing my food prep. So I'm soaking things that I need to soak. And then I start slicing and dicing onions and garlic. We use these almost every day. So I always have onions and garlic ready to go in the fridge and containers. We use a lot of carrots. So I have carrots that are not only sliced for throwing into stir fries ready to go, but then I also have them cut in sticks for snacks. Same thing with all my other veggies. They're all cut and prepared, ready to go. All my root veggies, I'm removing the greens off of them and using that in my compost broth. I talked about compost broth in the last event, so you guys can check out the replay for more information about that. And so basically I'm throwing in all these veggies. So as I'm prepping all these veggies, I'm removing like the stems of the broccoli, all the things that take up space that now won't be taking up space in the fridge. I'm now taking these nutrient scraps and turning it into a compost broth. And that broth now I'm going to be using for making my beans or my rice throughout the week. If you're going to be making any nut or seed milks, you know, you can soak these, but I tend to actually make these more later on in the week, to be honest. So I may not always get to this on my Sunday. I might be making that a little bit more in the midweek to sustain us through the last part of the week before I do my big meal prep again. And then of course, I always make once a week, I just rotate around what I'm making. I'm either making a soup or a stew, I'm making beans, or I'm making lentils. So I'm always just switching around and rotating from one week to the next what I'm making, so I have rotation. If you have any extra veggies, very quickly, if you know how to make a lacto-fermented veggie, you can do that. And this is so easy to make. So if you just look online, just go through the process and learn how to make your own lacto-fermented veggies. It is such an easy process that if you're food prepping, you could actually end up having a lacto-fermented veggie jar starting to ferment within 10 minutes while you're food prepping. So it's a really fun thing to do. And then you have a preserved veggie that you can then be snacking on the following week once it has fermented. I always make one dip, sauce, dressing, or salsa, something to use throughout the week. I'm usually making enough though to last for 2 or 3 weeks. So I have rotation. So even though I'm only making one dip a week, as you do this every week, you'll have rotation eventually because then you're rotating around your salsas. And then I always do one baked good. And in that baked good, so if I'm making a muffin or I'm making a bread or something like that, not so much with bread, but especially if I'm making baked muffins or morning glory muffins or cookies or something like that, I'm adding in a fruit or veggie that I have prepared at that time. So that is what food prep looks for me. And so, you know, for every family, it's going to look a little different because, you know, we all eat differently. But I'm hoping that this presentation at least gives you an idea of some tips that you can start implementing in your own meal planning and in your own home. And to help you realize the myth that we don't have time to food prep, because in reality, if we're spending a half an hour preparing food every night for dinner, you know, we can shorten that by spending 2 to 3 hours on a Sunday or on a one day a week where we're preparing all that and having it ready to go. So instead of spending a half an hour to an hour preparing our food for dinner, we're only spending maybe, you know, anywhere between 5 to 10, maybe 20 minutes at the most, depending on what we're making. And so you're reallocating that time, right? So it may even just even out and be balanced, or you might save a little bit of time. But the true benefit is that if we do this, we are more likely to eat healthier throughout the week and model healthier lifestyle for our children, which I think is really important when they're growing up with the American Standard Diet all around them and this idea of convenience. So how can we involve the family? And I think this is kind of the fun about meal planning, but we also kind of have to make it fun in itself for the kids to really be interested. But one thing I'd like to remind everyone is kids want to spend more time with us, no matter what age. And of course, as they get older, it doesn't seem like they want to spend as much time with us. But in reality, our children want to bond and connect with us. And what better way to do that than over food? We do spend a lot of time thinking about preparing food and being in the kitchen. So let's involve our kids with that so we get that bonding time in. But we want to make the kitchen fun and joyous. So listen to music, put on your kid's favorite audiobook and listen to it together. Do food education in the kitchen. So oftentimes we'll just watch a quick video on YouTube, learn about food, and we talk about it. And then we turn it into trivia games. And then I think an important reward and incentive is that they are spending more time with you. So one thing that we do is on Sundays, if my son helps me in the kitchen, or on his Friday when he's making his meal, what we talk about is Friday night is our family movie night. So if he helps me in the kitchen and we're making food together, I explain to him how it helps me by saving me time. So that free time that I would otherwise be in the kitchen, I now get to spend with him. So I make a point every time he helps me in the kitchen, when we're done, I am now spending time with him instead of spending more time in the kitchen. So, and I thank him. I always thank him. I always show my appreciation for his help and his contribution. And I highlight that since he was helped me, I now get to sit down and play this board game with him. Or now we get to sit down and do an interactive game together, or we get to go on an extra long walk because now I have that time to connect with him because he helped me. So we are a team, you know, we're a team in the kitchen, and there are benefits to us being a team. And I always talk about that with him so he understands that because he's helping me, he now gets to spend more time with me. And I like to encourage you to also notice your phrasing. You know, how do you portray your own relationship in the kitchen? And it could be subtle looks like us just talking about how exhausted we are being in the kitchen, how we don't want to do dishes, or how, oh, I really don't want to cook dinner right now, I'm too tired. If our kids hear us saying that all the time, what kind of limiting beliefs are we already instilling in them? right? And I think this is it's something we don't always think about. I catch myself doing it all the time. And I think to myself, I was like, oh no, Candice, you can't use that phrasing. You know, I'm telling my kid that I'm not enjoying being in the kitchen, that I'm not having a good relationship with food and meal planning. And then he's going to end up being raised with that perception, which is what most of us have been raised with. So I'm going to encourage you guys to start noticing your phrasing, you know, your expressions of how you talk about and how you relate to your time in the kitchen and your food prep. Because if you start to talk about, I'm excited, I'm going to be going in there and I'm going to be cutting up these vegetables and putting a rainbow into our meal, you're changing the belief system behind what it means to be food prepping for our children. If our kids are helping us in the kitchen, expect a mess and just embrace it. You know, my kid sometimes in the beginning, he would just like feel so shocked when he made a mess and he'd feel so bad. And it's like, we got to come back to the don't cry over spilled milk. Because if our children feel like they're doing something wrong in the kitchen, and even at an early age, they're going to have that limiting belief that I can't do this, I don't belong here. So we always want to make sure our children feel welcomed. The mess is welcomed in the kitchen, so embrace it, and then have them help clean up afterwards, and they're learning how to clean up after themselves. And of course, make it part of the family routine. And then now that we're doing more homeschooling too, I want to highlight that you can actually incorporate culinary practices into your homeschooling, or what we would like to rephrase as life schooling curriculum. So if you are doing a homeschooling program for your children, you can incorporate them learning how to cook and meal plan and learn about food as part of that curriculum. And we'll have a whole nother event with more information about that Janae will talk about at the end. So real quick, let's go ahead and get to the Juice Plus information. I highlighted the complete shake mix. I love this shake mix. It has changed my meal planning. It has changed my life. It's changed my relationship with my son. I just love it. And it gives me reassurance that we are supporting a healthy diet. There's other wonderful Juice Plus products as well. These complete bars can be a great snack to have on hand, and that can really help you with your time in the kitchen. Why Juice Plus? Well, it is one of the most researched nutritional products in the world, and it is time tested using all these wonderful things that are important when you're looking at research. I do want to highlight these capsules that are great for parents or any adults, and there are these 3 versions available as gummies for children. This is some information about the results of the research. We have a wonderful program where your children can get the gummies for free if they participate in the family health study. And they can participate for up to 4 years. And your child just really needs to be enrolled in school. So any school-age child, even up through college, can participate in this program. And this is the results of the program. 60% of kids were missing fewer days of school. 56 were taking fewer prescription drugs, 66% visiting the doctor less, and so on. These are all important things that we want for our children. And I think this is just a fantastic study and program that we have available. This summer, we have a promotion happening that if you sign up for the Healthy Starts program, you end up getting 2 bottles that you purchase, but your child gets the gummies for free. And if you sign up this summer, you get a bonus of getting a free bag of the Juice Plus Complete Mix for free. Just pay $5 for the shipping and handling. And so this can give you a wonderful opportunity to try the Complete Mix and see how the Complete Mix works for your family while supporting more good health for 2 people of your family or more. But to 2 people, if you sign 1 adult up, and you'd sign up 1 child for free. So if you're interested in learning more about this program or signing up, you can connect with the person who invited you. So thank you so much for coming, and I hope you guys are inspired and that you continue developing a wonderful relationship with your meal planning and with your food prep and encouraging healthy eating for your family.
Oh, wow. Candice, that was so awesome. I learned so much. And again, I always ask, hey, where were you? And I had a lot of kids in the house. I can still use a lot of this information. And I just love how you shared how you can store those vegetables ahead of time. That's great. I know there's going to be a lot of questions Somebody already asked about something, so we could find out and put that answer on the Facebook page, but thank you. And yes, you mentioned Juice Plus. Some of us realize that no matter how many fruits and vegetables we eat, it's really hard to get 7 to 14 every single day. So if anybody wants more information about the Juice Plus capsules, chewies, or shakes, or the Tower Garden, so you can grow your own fruits and vegetables in the backyard or indoors. Or if you want more information, yes, please get back with the person who invited you to this call. And if you want to share this with a child and with the Family Healthy Starts program, please again ask us. And I just have to say that if you're already thinking about someone who might need more fruits and vegetables in their life, besides yourself, you might also take a look at our business opportunity. At very least, it would help pay for your Juice Plus. And if you want to get in touch with Candice, you can explore more of her services and offerings at herballivingandhealing.com, and we will put that on the Facebook page. And I could put that in the chat really quickly before we leave. And you can follow her recipe and meals and inspirations on Facebook and Instagram. So I hope that you'll all join us next week for on the July 29th. We're going to have a talk that will be presented by Haya Hagler, certified birth doula and massage therapist. The talk is called Baby-Led Weaning and Nursing. So please let your friends who are expecting or have nursing babies and children know about this. We have a wonderful lineup this summer, and I'll just share my screen here for a second and show you what it looks like. There you go. If you can see, there's our flyer. It's also on our Facebook page. If you're not on our Facebook page, then just please ask whoever invited you here to invite you on. So thank you very much.